Have you ever wondered why witches have been such a captivating figure throughout history, straddling the line between fear and fascination? From the early Christians in Europe who viewed witches as malevolent beings, to the modern-day practitioners of Wicca who use spells for healing and protection, the image of the witch has undergone a significant transformation. Before we continue, we'd like to remind you to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. We appreciate your support, and it helps us keep producing more content like this. Now, back our journey. In the span of just over a century, from 1500 to 1660, up to 80,000 suspected witches were executed in Europe. The publication of the Malleus Maleficarum in 1486 did nothing to quell the hysteria, instead labeling witchcraft as heresy and fueling the fires of fear and suspicion. Then there were the infamous Salem witch trials 1692, where around 150 people were accused, and 18 were put to death. The trials were a product of societal tensions, fear of outsiders, and a deeply ingrained belief in the supernatural. Even after the trials ended in 1693, their legacy for centuries influencing everything from literature to politics. Today, witches continue to be a source of fascination, even as they face persecution in various parts of the world. They've become symbols of empowerment, rebellion, and the supernatural, their stories woven into the fabric of our cultural narrative. But where did these stereotypes come from? How did witches transform from feared outcasts to intriguing icons? And what can their story tell us about our own fears, beliefs, and the societies we live in? Join us as we journey through history, unraveling the mystery of witches and their intriguing tale. Witchcraft has roots deeper than you might imagine, stretching back to the dawn of civilization. Long before the Salem witch trials and the witch hunts of the Middle Ages, witchcraft held a significant place in human societies. Delving into the annals of history and ancient cultures, witches were often respected figures. They were the keepers of wisdom, the healers, and the mediators between humans and the spiritual realm. Their practices were rooted in nature and the cycles of the earth. But as societies evolved, so did the perception of witches. The arrival of Christianity in Europe marked a significant shift in how witchcraft was viewed. The once respected practitioners of folk medicine and spirituality were now seen through a lens of fear and suspicion. They were no longer healers and guides, but beings associated with evil and darkness. The publication of Malleus Maleficarum in the late 15th century further fueled this fear. This infamous book labeled witchcraft as heresy, leading to a surge of witch hunts and executions. It's estimated that between the years 1500 and 1660, up to 80,000 suspected witches were put to death in Europe. As we crossed the Atlantic to the New World, the fear of witches didn't diminish. In fact, it grew. The Salem witch trials of the late 17th century are a stark example of this, where around 150 people were accused and 18 put to death. But it's essential to remember that despite the fear, the persecution, and the violence, the practice of witchcraft survived. Today, witches continue their traditions, not as beings of evil, but as practitioners of a spiritual path that respects nature and seeks to live in harmony with it. As we move into the Middle Ages, the perception of witches takes a dark turn. The Middle Ages saw a dramatic shift in attitudes towards witches, culminating in widespread witch hunts. During this period, the perception of witches morphed drastically. No longer viewed as harmless practitioners of old traditions, witches became synonymous with evil in the eyes of early Christians in Europe. This change in attitude was fueled by fear, superstition, and a desire to eradicate anything considered heretical. The witch hunts that swept across Europe from the 15th to the 17th centuries were brutal and relentless. It's estimated that between 60 to 80,000 suspected witches were put to death. The reasons behind these hunts were complex, entwining religious fervor, societal tensions, and the fear of the unknown. In 1486, the infamous publication known as the Malleus Maleficarum, or the Hammer of Witches, was released. This treatise, written by two German monks, labeled witchcraft as heresy and outlined methods for the identification and prosecution of witches. Its impact was profound, escalating the witch hysteria to unprecedented levels. These hunts were not just about eradicating perceived evil, they also served to control and suppress. Those who did not conform to societal norms, particularly women, bore the brunt of these persecutions. the witch hunts became a tool of social regulation, censoring dissent and maintaining the status quo. As we delve deeper into this dark chapter of human history, we see the profound impact these witch hunts had on society. They sowed seeds of distrust, instilled fear, and led to the loss of countless innocent lives. Yet, despite the atrocities committed during these hunts, the fascination with witches and witchcraft endured. Perhaps it's the allure of the unknown, the power of the forbidden, or simply the human need to make sense of the unexplainable that has kept the legend of witches alive through the centuries. As we cross the Atlantic, the witch hysteria takes a new form in the New World. The Salem witch trials of 1692 remain one of the most notorious episodes in the history of witchcraft. In the late 17th century, a small town named Salem in Massachusetts became the epicenter of a witch hysteria that would forever leave its mark on history. The spark that ignited this wildfire of paranoia and fear was a seemingly innocent one. A group of young girls claimed to be possessed by the devil, accusing several local women of witchcraft. But these accusations were more than mere child's play. They were the product of a society fraught with tensions and fears. The people of Salem lived in a world where the supernatural was as real as the earth beneath their feet. Witches and demons were not just the stuff of bedtime stories, they were seen as tangible threats to their well-being and their souls. As the accusations began to spread, the town was consumed by a hysteria that saw around 150 people accused of witchcraft. 19 of these unfortunate souls met their end at the gallows, their lives cut short by the noose of suspicion and fear. The trials were a frenzy of finger-pointing and fear-mongering, fueled by societal tensions and a belief in the supernatural that was deeply ingrained in the psyche of the New World settlers. But as quickly as the hysteria had taken hold, it began to fade. By 1693, the trials had come to an end, the public opinion having turned against them. The Massachusetts General Court then took steps to right the wrongs of the trials, annulling guilty verdicts and granting indemnities to the families of those who had been accused. Yet the Salem witch trials were far from a fleeting moment of madness. They left an indelible mark on the fabric of American history, casting a long shadow that can still be felt today. They have been examined and re-examined, interpreted and reinterpreted, serving as a cautionary tale of what can happen when fear and suspicion are allowed to override reason and justice. The trials have also found their way into popular culture. Arthur Miller's play, The Crucible, used the trials as a metaphor for the anti-communist witch hunts of the 1950s, drawing a parallel between the fear-driven hysteria of 17th century Salem and the political climate of his own time. Though the trials ended, their legacy endured, forever etching the image of the witch into the American psyche. Far from disappearing, witches have found a place in our contemporary society, shedding their historical stigma. In the present day, the perception of witches has undergone a radical transformation. No longer are they the objects of fear, suspicion, and condemnation. Instead, they are increasingly seen as practitioners of an ancient and respected spiritual tradition. The rise of Wicca, a modern pagan witchcraft religion, has played a significant role in this shift. Originating in the early to mid-20th century, Wicca has grown into a worldwide movement, attracting those who feel a connection to nature, the divine feminine, and the mysteries of the universe. Modern witches, whether they identify as Wiccans or not, often strive to use their practices for good rather than harm. Spells, once feared as tools of malevolent magic, are now more commonly used for healing, protection, and personal growth. The principle of harm none, a tenet found in many forms of modern witchcraft, forms a stark contrast to the historical image of witches as malevolent beings. However, it's important to note that the evolution of witchcraft hasn't been uniform across the globe. In certain parts of the world, accusations of witchcraft and the persecution of suspected witches continue even today. This serves as a sobering reminder that the legacy of fear and misunderstanding surrounding witches is far from eradicated. Yet despite these challenges, the figure of the witch endures and adapts. Whether they're casting a circle in a modern city apartment or practicing age-old rituals in a secluded forest, witches today are a testament to the resilience and adaptability of this ancient tradition. They're not just a relic of the past, but an integral part of our contemporary world. From ancient times to the present day, the figure of the witch continues to captivate and perplex us. As we've seen, The history of witches is a complex and fascinating one, filled with fear, misunderstanding, and resilience. From the birth of witchcraft, through the tumultuous witch hunts of the Middle Ages, to the infamous Salem witch trials, witches have been a source of intrigue and trepidation. Yet they have also been figures of resilience, surviving through centuries of persecution and misunderstanding. In modern times, witches have found new life in the practice of Wicca, a peaceful and nature-based religion, a stark contrast to the fear and hysteria of the past. Despite the trials they faced, witches continue to captivate our imaginations, embodying the mystery of the unknown and the power of the feminine. Their enduring allure lies in their ability to defy norms, to challenge power, and to persist in the face of adversity. So the next time you encounter the figure of a witch, remember the rich and diverse history that lies behind this captivating figure.